Ladies and gentlemen, this picture that you have just seen is the last live performance that Elvis ever done on stage. Thank you. God bless you.
August 16th, 1977. Just another summer morning in Memphis, or so it seemed. The air was thick with heat and Graceland's gates were closed as usual. But inside the mansion, everything changed. Elvis Presley, the man millions called the King, was found collapsed in his bathroom, unresponsive. Paramedics rushed in, desperate to revive him. His girlfriend, Ginger Alden, screamed for help. Chaos erupted in the halls of the house that had always been his fortress. But amidst the panic, one man stood out, completely still. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, and the only one who seemed to know exactly what to do next. Vernon didn't shout, he didn't weep, he didn't look lost. He started making calls, doctors, lawyers, and within the hour, reporters. He directed traffic in a house flooded with grief, like a man who had rehearsed this moment. Was it shock? Was it denial? Or was it something else entirely? Something planned, perhaps? Even expected? Vernon had always been protective of his son, but in those first moments after Elvis's death, his calm felt strange, almost too calm. Witnesses said Vernon stayed in control the whole time, that he didn't want anyone going upstairs, that he personally made sure the media got only the official version of events. And that version? It was clean, controlled, sanitized. Elvis had died of heart failure. No further details would be released. End of story. But for those close to the family, that explanation felt hollow. Ginger Alden's own family claimed she was pushed out quickly, her voice never truly heard. Longtime staff members were told to stay quiet. And Vernon? He was already planning the funeral within 24 hours. Elvis's body wasn't even cold before Vernon began locking things down. His room, his personal notes, and even access to the upstairs of Graceland. From that day forward, no one would go back up there except immediate family. Not even presidents. Why? What was he trying to keep hidden? Some say Vernon was just being a father, that his actions came from love, not secrecy. But others, those who knew how tightly Vernon controlled Elvis's life, weren't so sure. He had always been more than a father. He was the manager, the fixer, the man behind the curtain. And if Elvis's death had revealed something ugly or dangerous, Vernon was the one person who could bury it before it saw daylight. There's a moment that gets mentioned in hushed tones by Graceland's staff from that day. When Elvis was being taken out on a stretcher, Vernon stopped everyone. He pulled a small box from under Elvis's bed. No one knows what was in it. He never spoke of it again. But whatever it was, he held onto it tightly, like it was more than just a keepsake, like it was a key to something bigger. And that wasn't all. Within days, Vernon had ordered the sealing of Elvis's medical records. He limited what doctors could say publicly. Even the official autopsy was locked away, its full contents sealed for decades. All anyone was allowed to hear was a simple, vague statement. Cardiac arrest. That's it. No details, no explanation, just silence. People started asking questions, of course, but Vernon had a way of shutting them down without ever raising his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He just kept moving forward. Reporters were turned away. Investigators hit roadblocks. And all the while, Vernon kept his grip tight on the estate, on the legacy, and on the story. It was almost like he'd been preparing for this moment for years. Now here's the part that gives people chills. Just weeks before Elvis died, Vernon had a new security system installed at Graceland. Only a handful of people were given access. He also made changes to Elvis's will. Minor ones maybe, but timed a little too conveniently. And in private conversations, friends say Vernon seemed distant, worried, almost like he knew something was coming. What did he know? We may never fully understand Vernon Presley's mindset that day. Was he heartbroken? Absolutely. But was he also hiding something? That's the question that still lingers in every hallway of Graceland, in every sealed drawer, in every redacted file, And in the quiet, emotionless way, Vernon carried out his son's final moments. Because most fathers wouldn't be that calm. Most fathers wouldn't act like they had a plan. But Vernon did, and he executed it flawlessly. So the real mystery might not just be how Elvis died, but how Vernon reacted. Why was he so composed? What didn't he want the world to see? And what secrets did he take with him when he passed just 2 years later? One thing's for sure, Vernon didn't just lose a son that day, he became the sole guardian of a legacy. And maybe the keeper of a truth the world wasn't ready to hear. And that's where this story begins. Before the world knew the name Elvis Presley, Vernon Presley was just a small-town man trying to make ends meet. Born in Mississippi, Vernon lived through the Great Depression, scraping by with odd jobs and the kind of quiet determination that came from having no safety net. He married Gladys, and together they raised their only child in a 2-room house in Tupelo. Money was tight, life was simple, but Vernon had one constant in his life: Elvis. When Elvis started gaining attention for his music, Vernon didn't hesitate. He stepped in, not just as a father, but as a manager, a gatekeeper, and eventually, a shield. While most fathers might have cheered from the sidelines, Vernon built himself into the machinery of Elvis's career. He oversaw the money, the contracts, the properties, even the staff. Everything flowed through Vernon, and for a long time, Elvis trusted him completely. But here's where things start to get complicated. Vernon wasn't trained for the music industry, he wasn't a seasoned business strategist, and yet he made major decisions that affected every aspect of Elvis's life. Some say he was just doing his best, others say he was in way over his head, and a few whisper that maybe, just maybe, he liked the control a little too much. Insiders who spent time at Graceland often describe Vernon as quiet but watchful. He didn't seek out the spotlight, he wasn't flashy, but he always knew who was around Elvis, what was being said, and what money was coming in or going out. Staff members had to go through Vernon to get anything approved, whether it was a raise or even time off. And when Elvis was on tour, Vernon traveled with him, keeping the books and managing the crew. He wasn't just nearby, he was everywhere. At times, that loyalty became smothering. Vernon would intercept people before they could speak to Elvis. He'd sit in on meetings even when it made others uncomfortable. Some of Elvis's closest friends, his so-called Memphis Mafia, grew wary of Vernon's influence. They claimed he filtered information, shaped decisions, and controlled the narrative. And when Elvis started struggling with health issues and drug use, Vernon often downplayed the seriousness of it all. Was it denial? Or was it calculated silence? Financially, Vernon made some questionable choices. He didn't invest Elvis's fortune in long-term assets. He didn't push for more control over royalties. In fact, many believe that deals Vernon helped approve, like the infamous sale of Elvis's back catalog for a fraction of its value, cost the Presley estate millions. Was he trying to keep the cash flowing short-term? Or did he simply not understand the long game? Whatever the case, when Elvis died, Vernon didn't hesitate. He took full control of the estate, the narrative, and the image. He became executor of the will, and within weeks, he was making decisions that shaped Elvis's legacy forever. He hired lawyers. He shut down personal interviews. He even oversaw which items were kept, sold, or destroyed. Everything went through Vernon, and this time, there was no one left to question him. But here's the part that really stirs debate. Vernon wasn't just acting out of grief. He was remarkably efficient. Some would even say, strategic. In the middle of one of the most painful events of his life, Vernon began restructuring Elvis's business affairs with speed and precision. He cut off deals, renegotiated royalties, even planned out how Graceland would eventually become a tourist destination, all while the public was still mourning. And then there's the personal side. Friends say Vernon rarely cried, that he didn't talk much about Elvis after the funeral, that he seemed more focused on what came next than on what had just happened. Maybe that was his way of coping, or maybe he knew that controlling the aftermath would be his final and most important role. Vernon's relationship with fame was always distant. He didn't crave attention, but he did crave control. And when Elvis passed, Vernon's control went unchecked. He became the sole filter between the public and the truth. If there were details about Elvis's health, his final hours, or anything else that could cast a shadow over the legacy, Vernon made sure those details stayed buried. And that's where the real tension lies. Was Vernon simply preserving his son's legacy, or was he covering up something deeper? Some biographers suggest Vernon may have known the full extent of Elvis's drug use, but chose to minimize it for the sake of public image. Others claim Vernon suppressed key information in the autopsy. Even Elvis's longtime doctor, George Nicopolis, later hinted that there were things left out of the official story, and that Vernon was part of the reason why. Whatever the truth is, one thing is clear. Vernon was more than just Elvis's dad. He was the man who shaped how the world remembers Elvis, both in life and in death. And in doing so, he may have locked away more than just memorabilia. He may have sealed up the real story forever. So ask yourself, was Vernon Presley a loyal father doing his best to protect a son the world adored? Or was he the final editor of a carefully curated legend, one that may never be told in full? The line between love and control can be thin. And Vernon walked that line until the very end. Elvis Presley's death was supposed to offer closure, but instead it sparked decades of questions, many pointing to Vernon Presley. The official report claimed Elvis was found unresponsive at 2:30 p.m., yet some close to him suggested it happened earlier. Ginger Alden, Elvis's girlfriend, said she found him hours before news broke. Conflicting accounts surround who was there, what was done, and when paramedics were called. Vernon's behavior was also inconsistent. Some described him as frantic, others as eerily calm. Then came the autopsy. Though officially labeled a heart attack, toxicology revealed high levels of prescription drugs and sedatives. Vernon quickly intervened, requesting the full report be sealed for 50 years. Why? His actions immediately after Elvis's death, from limiting information to managing the narrative, only fueled suspicions. Whether out of protection or secrecy, Vernon's choices left behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a timeline that still doesn't fully make sense. Vernon claimed it was to protect Elvis's dignity, but critics say it was to control the fallout. If the world had known what was really in Elvis's system, if it had seen just how deep the drug problem went, it might have damaged the image Vernon worked so hard to protect. But there's more. In the days after Elvis's death, Vernon made several moves that raised eyebrows. He personally oversaw the transport of Elvis's body, not just from Graceland to the funeral home, but during the final preparations. He gave strict instructions. No photographs of the body. No details about the embalming, no close-up press coverage. Even the pallbearers were carefully selected from Vernon's trusted circle. Then came the cleanup. Quiet, fast, and carefully managed. Rumors spread that parts of the upstairs bathroom were stripped or sanitized before investigators could fully examine it. Some former staff have claimed Vernon ordered certain items removed from the bedroom that same night, pill bottles, documents, even notes Elvis had written just days before. Those items were never seen again. And then there's the strange mention of a second bathroom. It was a quiet rumor that surfaced years later, an idea that there was another private bathroom space connected to Elvis's room, used only by him. Some say it's where he actually collapsed. Others think it was used to hide certain items before police and paramedics arrived. There's no confirmation it ever existed, but the speculation has never died down. Vernon's choices in the aftermath only fueled the theories. He denied requests from journalists and biographers to access Elvis's personal journals. He refused to release medical records. He even pushed back on interviews with doctors who had treated Elvis for years. It was as if every path to the truth was blocked by one man, and that man was Vernon Presley. Was he trying to protect his son, or was he protecting himself? Some documents released years later show Vernon was fully aware of Elvis's drug use. In fact, financial records revealed Vernon had signed off on multiple prescriptions under Elvis's name. He wasn't just a bystander, he was involved, and yet he insisted on silence. Even close friends, people who had been around the Presley family for years, said Vernon became untouchable after Elvis died. He gave short answers, he avoided interviews, And when he did speak, it was always vague, controlled, scripted, as if any slip could unravel something he couldn't afford to expose. One former bodyguard described Vernon as the firewall. Nothing got through him. Nothing got out. Not grief, not scandal, not truth. So what was he hiding? The theories run deep. Some believe Vernon knew Elvis was deteriorating and did nothing. Others think he orchestrated the silence to avoid legal battles, protect the estate, and control Elvis's posthumous reputation. A few go further, claiming Vernon may have manipulated records, influenced medical statements, and even removed evidence from the scene. We'll probably never know exactly what Vernon Presley did or didn't do on that fateful day. But the inconsistencies, the redactions, and the unexplained silences all point to one thing. This wasn't just a father grieving. This was a man managing a moment, carefully, intentionally, and perhaps out of fear. Fear of what the truth might do to the legend. So here's the question that still echoes through Graceland's locked doors. Why did Vernon order silence? And who exactly was he protecting? There are two ways to look at Vernon Presley: as a heartbroken father left behind to pick up the pieces of a shattered world, or as the architect of one of the most carefully controlled legacies in pop culture history. And maybe, just maybe, he was both. After Elvis died, Vernon didn't just mourn, he managed. And that management wasn't just logistical, it was narrative. The very first thing he protected wasn't Elvis's belongings, it was Elvis's image. Within days, Vernon was turning people away. Journalists, biographers, investigators, all denied access to the man behind the myth. But why? What was so dangerous about the truth? Some say Vernon knew the truth would unravel everything Elvis had built. Others say he was trying to hide things that weren't about Elvis at all, but about Vernon himself. Let's break it down. Vernon was the executor of Elvis's estate, and that meant he had the power to shape what the world would see, hear, and remember. The first thing he did, lock away Elvis's personal journals. Dozens of handwritten pages, reflections, frustrations, thoughts no one else was ever meant to see. Then came the tapes, studio outtakes, private recordings, even personal letters, all boxed, cataloged, and sealed. No one knows where they all went, only that Vernon made sure they were inaccessible. And while the public was left with a clean story, Elvis died of heart failure, end of story, fans and insiders started whispering. What about the rumored secret children? Women from Elvis's past who came forward later claiming he'd fathered kids outside of marriage. Vernon never responded, not once. No comment, no denial, just silence. What about Elvis's declining health in the final year? Why did Vernon downplay it, even when those around Elvis were alarmed? Did he know it was worse than he let on? Or did he choose not to know? And then, the mafia connections. Elvis had long claimed to be in contact with the law enforcement, even the FBI, and had a strange fascination with organized crime. Some believe he had dealings, relationships that may have gone too far. If that were true, who else would have known? Probably only Vernon. Now think about how Vernon used mystery to shape the legacy. Graceland didn't open its upstairs. The autopsy was sealed. Rumors weren't corrected. They were ignored. And the result? Public fascination skyrocketed. Interest became obsession. Millions poured in. By controlling the story, Vernon didn't just protect Elvis's dignity, he turned it into a business model. Every unanswered question became a magnet. Fans traveled thousands of miles just to stand near the house. Millions of dollars flowed through the estate. The fewer answers Vernon gave, the more the public clung to the myth. And Vernon knew it. In his rare public comments, Vernon Presley consistently deflected questions about Elvis's addiction and final days, insisting people remember the music, not the medicine. While his grief was genuine, his control over Elvis's legacy was unwavering. Some see his silence as protection, others as strategic omission. Vernon wasn't a manipulator in the traditional sense, but he understood the power of mystery and used it to shape a myth. After Elvis's death, he became reclusive, burdened by secrets he may have carried long before that tragic day. Biographers suggest he knew the truth about Elvis's declining health and drug use, but chose to suppress it, locking away files, stifling investigations, and sealing the most intimate parts of Elvis's story. Whether out of love or fear, Vernon guarded his son's legacy fiercely. Yet decades later, questions remain about sealed autopsy reports, hidden medical records, and the truth locked away inside Graceland's private upstairs. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a mystery. What do you think Vernon was hiding? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. Elvis may be gone, but the questions are far from over.